KLTV soundtrack, KLTV soundtrack.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday meeting of the VOCC. We'll start with invocation. We have Mr. Abel with us today, and we appreciate that, and let him lead us in invocation.
This is from God's word, Philippians 1:9. And this is my prayer, that love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, so that you may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless until the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ, to the glory and praise of our God. Father, I just ask over Cowlitz County that there be unity, compassion, and love for all people. And for this meeting, Lord, I ask for the safety of those here, wisdom and love for them. And we ask this in Jesus' great name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Those that want to join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Let me see what agenda I'm working from here. I'd entertain a motion for approval of the minutes of October 20 to 22nd.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, call for a vote. Those in favor? Aye. Thank you. I'll run down the consent agenda as best I can. Proclamations. Gina, do you want to do that? We're going to start with a proclamation recognizing October 2025 as the 80th anniversary of National Disability Employment Awareness Month in Cowlitz County. I think con Gina into reading that for us.
Sure, I would love to. So I appreciate the opportunity to bring this today, as we've been involved in supported employment services for individuals with developmental disabilities for quite a few years in the county, lots of local support. And so I'm going to read through the proclamation. Okay. Whereas October 2025 marks the 80th anniversary of National Disability Employment Awareness Month, and whereas the purpose of National Disability Employment Awareness Month is to raise awareness of employing individuals with disabilities and to recognize their contribution to the workforce, and whereas Cowlitz County individuals with disabilities, families, friends, job coaches, and local businesses have created opportunities for individuals with disabilities to obtain and maintain employment within Cowlitz County. And whereas employment for all people, including individuals with disabilities, contributes to a strong community economy and increased independence. Now, therefore, it be resolved that Cowlitz County recognize October 2025 as the 80th anniversary of National Disability Employment Awareness Month, and thanks the many people in our community who have contributed to increased employment opportunities for all members of our community. And I just brought a couple, I know I've showed this here before, but we have over 50 local businesses that hired individuals with disabilities or currently have individuals employed. So I just brought a couple of those handouts if anyone's interested in looking at those. We also have it up on our website. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to bring this forward just as a way to do an additional recognition and acknowledgement of the work that's happening in the community.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Gina. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Seediger and I had the privilege of seeing a young man grow up that participates in these programs, and he's a special kid, so we're glad to see we can help. Consent agenda, call for public hearing. We got a closed public hearing coming up on November 4th, 2025 at 9:30 to consider preliminary rural subdivision plat approval, KT West subdivision, South Payne Road. A closed public hearing, just to remind you, and I'll remind again on November, unless you've spoken at the planning commission about this project, you're not allowed to speak here. It's not an open mic. Agreements, contracts, bid awards. I got 2 sheets going here. Bid award to JL Stordahl and Sons for the purchase of rock delivery stockpile for the roads, total amount 91,286. This year, we're stockpiling some rock in three different locations. Three different shops, so we have it on hand. Amendment number 4, the contract with the Washington State Healthcare Authority to provide funding to develop and implement the medication for opioid use disorder in jails, extending until June 30th, 2026. The additional funding is $437,000. This is money we get from the state to help offset what it costs us over there. 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are all interlocal agreements of participation for Spillman's Records Management System. Cost share with the city of Castle Rock, you'll see, city of Woodland. These are records that our sheriff's office works, and it's the cities use this. We charge them. I asked yesterday, it's based, the share to the city is based on the number of users that they have in the system. So we have a agreement with, as I said, Castle Rock, City of Woodland, City of Kelso, City of Klamath, and City of Longview. 9, contract with Washington State Department of Ecology to provide Washington Conservation Corps crews to be used in grant-related projects. What we use these folks for is up in the monument. Well, 2 weeks up in the monument, and then it's a 3-week program. It'll happen. I don't know when Jennifer sends them out. I'm sure it's not in the winter, it'll probably be spring or summer. And they'll spend 2 weeks in the monument working on noxious weeds, and then she had a week they were going someplace else. Board correspondence, affidavit of posting resume for the month of September. Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, a letter for comprehensive assessment of the Merwin project. FERC regarding the 2024 Merwin, Yale, and Swift #1 projects. FERC dated 10/16/25 regarding the 2025 dam safety inspection follow-up Yale project. FERC notice dated 10/10/25 regarding the 13th part 12D report for periodic inspection of the Swift #1. Memo dated 9/23/25 from Lexington Control Zone regarding the 26 budget estimate. Letter dated 10/23/25 to the Boundary Review Board regarding the annexation of Hazel Street Railroad grade separation, which officially annexes the land into the city of Kelso. Is that their bridge project over by going into the golf course? Yeah. And number 11, the last one, the sheriff's signed a personal service agreement with Incident Management Partners to provide emergency evacuation planning and consultation services, total cost not to exceed $8,000. They work with Department of Emergency Management for that. Vouchers in the amount of $2,501,508.32. That's consent agenda. Questions, comments on consent?
I just had one,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, on all those things that we get from FERC. Are there like, is it a continual project that's going on at those dams? Because we get them very often.
Yeah, they're always, they're copies of letters between the Regulatory Commission and Pacific Power, and we get a copy of that, and they're always, since I've been here, it's almost weekly
Yeah.
that they're corresponding on different projects up there, different things they're doing. Anything else? Okay, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Can we have a motion to approve? Last chance for questions. I don't see any hands. Call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We don't have a public hearing till 9:30. I will update you on something that was brought up last week. We had gentlemen in and come and ask about work being done on down Pacific Avenue, North Pacific Avenue in Kelso, or out by the railroad. This came from one of our employees. This is a response to the work occurring between the levee and the river in North Kelso. The Dike District owns and operates land under the levee with a small strip at the toe to help with maintenance. For the most part, the land south of the old water plant is owned by the city of Kelso. The land north of it is owned by BNSF. The crews that have been working removing vegetation in that area is a combination of a contractor and the county work crew, both hired by the city of Kelso. I believe that once that area south of the plant is done, the work crew will move north of the plant and work for BNSF. They are removing brush and any trees that appear to be danger trees. So if anybody was in attendance last week, that was a question, and that's the answer to that. Other than that, we don't have anything till 9:30. So if you have something, we'll open it up till then. We do have Board of Health coming in at 10 today.
Just a quick update, Mr. Chair, on the deal with Walker Road.
Yeah,
I communicated with the gentleman who was here and through a couple of other people via email and confirmed with the sheriff it is a civil matter and that it is up to the original plaintiff to bring awareness to the court that the gentleman on Walker Road has not complied in order for it to go any further. And I did get an email from somebody who was watching the video, who was watching our meeting. And I forwarded that to you guys this morning when I got it. He's asking us to take extra steps to see what we can do as a county to alleviate this in the future. I don't know if there's anything that we can. It's private property. He's doing what it's his own land. But anyway, I forwarded that to you guys, but they were happy that we at least gave them what the next step is. They're not happy that they have to pay an attorney to take them back to court, but that's not, there's nothing we can do about that. So.
well, I appreciate that. Those are tough ones because basically they're asking us to intervene in a private matter, and I think that's walking a.
I also followed up with building and planning on that same subject to see if was there any way we could stop work order on that or do anything from the building and planning side, and had a conversation between building and planning and prosecuting attorney's office, and basically the answer is no. It goes back to, like you said, they got to follow up with the court again.
Yeah, this gentleman is asking us to create a code and an enforcement mechanism for that type of stuff in the future. And I don't know if that's within our purview or not.
The private road is a
Yeah,
problem.
and it's private property.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
True. Mr. Kaiser. Did you notice I brought up the names of Magnuson and Jackson last week?
You hit it, that your neighbor never caught the drift, whoever.
Oh, okay.
Said that, I exactly.
Yeah.
He promised this Walker Road thing, I haven't gone up and looked at it, I'm not gonna drive up there and look at it, I think I get the drift. If you guys check the records, this was about 25 years ago, I believe there was a county ordinance put on about if you had somebody like that. Got nothing to do with that right of way, it's got to do with his neighbors, his immediate neighbors can complain, like, if you turned your house into a junkyard, I couldn't complain about it because I'm not your immediate neighbor.
Yeah.
Maybe some other people in the room here might be able to complain because they're a little closer, but I believe it was adopted, I'm not sure, but there was a lot of falter around it 25-ish years ago. Like if you turned your place, like I said, the Junker Jones, none of my business because they ain't bothering me because I don't live there, but the next door neighbor, and it had to be immediate, you know, like both sides and across the street type of thing, to complain about that. Well, I don't know if it was ever adopted for sure or not, but I know there was a lot of talk about meetings and as the Daily News follow up on what was going on in the meeting, that might be one avenue to pursue. That's my 2 cents worth this morning.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. So an additional follow-up on the Walker Road and building and planning. Since there is the requirement for private road for the easement and the right-of-way, and if that right-of-way has been compromised significantly and someone in that 70 whatever residences or a new one wants to build or get a permit in there, can the county issue the permit when that right-of-way has been violated and is no longer meeting the requirements of our county safety, health and safety?
I don't, like at this point, I'm not sure the right of way has been violated is the problem, right?
Yeah.
The right-of-way has been violated with
Right.
with the mess right up to the edge of the roadway, then the right-of-way has certainly been violated.
I don't know how wide it is on there, but my understanding is it hasn't at this point.
Put a private road in, I'm required to have the 40-foot wide easement on there and make sure that it is a 40-foot wide easement. So either it is important for safety and health or it isn't. That's
Yeah.
Oops.
I don't know the answer to that one.
so that would be
I would
another
have to-
follow-up
Yeah.
on the stance of county and building and planning on private roadway. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd come to you later on and as I told you last time, I abandoned, not abandoned, I sold some property because I couldn't economically meet the 40-foot wide easement. Now you're telling me it's not, I'm not saying you're telling me, but by action, it's not necessary. So that's a follow-up.
Another suggestion that I got was that the homeowners develop an HOA. And part of the bylaws be that you can't have it the way that it is.
You know, and I think that's, I was gonna bring that with BPAC is when you guys do these private roads, you should put some kind of HOA type activity with it on what you
Can and can't do.
can and can't do with it. I totally agree. Oh, there you are.
I'm back.
Okay.
I like to go back up to number 11. And I just have a question because I've never heard of an evacuation plan. Would this be for Longview, Kelso, the county? And if there is any kind of a plan, shouldn't the public know about how it goes about, how it's implemented? If there is, I mean, apparently we've got all kinds of mountains and earthquake thingies going on and so shouldn't the public know if there's something happening, especially if we're spending money on it?
Yeah, I know there is a evacuation plan that Department of Emergency Management has. I'd have to, it may be on their website, but I know when they have an emergency, they enact whatever it is. But how visible it is out there, I don't know, Flo. I'd have to look at that, but I know they have.
They have one, but
Yeah.
nobody knows about it.
Well, that could be, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Top secret.
Tim's not here today.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure the city of Kelso also, when this was brought up at their council meeting, Andy did say that the city does have an evacuation plan also, and they just need to work on getting it made public so people are aware of it. So I'm sure the municipalities have them, it's just not, people aren't aware of them. Yeah.
anything else?
Good morning again. A further inquiry question is that since the diking districts come to the county for funding, and the diking district's been in the news lately again regarding us and Charlie's Restaurant and the inability for private enterprise to proceed there because the diking district apparently has purchased the Charlie's Restaurant property. it leads to the question, the Diking District has purchased that ground. It also, by my observation, purchased the ground south of that where public political signs used to be placed, and then they took that out of service because they didn't want political signs out there. Do you know what the purpose of the Diking District purchasing those grounds are? And there's background, is that the riverfront, major riverfront along the whole area, you can't build on because of the dike that's there, except for the ones that were grandfathered. So there's got to be a reason why the Diking District is purchasing these grounds. And then the second part would be purchasing the ground all the way out to the road versus if it is compromising the dike. I don't know. But they'll be coming, we're paying for their purchases.
Yeah, I don't know.
I was checking to see if one person was on that might have an answer to that. But we can get that answer for you, Ron.
Sure, I'll just put it on the, to follow
List
up.
of follow-ups.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You guys are giving us a to-do list today.
Mhm.
Anything else?
I've missed quite a few meetings, so I was wondering if you could give us an update on the Monticello Hospital. I understand the sale from Charlie's fell through. So is there any new stuff on buying that building or whatever's was in the past that's been going on?
Well, it's a city of Longview thing, but I believe Commissioner Rader probably has some better information than some of us.
Yeah, they were in negotiations with Peace Health, and there were some things that I was asked not to disclose, but I can tell you that currently it's halted until we have further discussion and conversation about whether or not Emerald City is going to be taking over our therapeutic courts and what that looks like moving forward.
Okay.
Yeah. And I had a conversation with Michael after our meeting, was it 2 weeks ago that we had that with Emerald City? I had a conversation with him. He is still working with Longview, the city of Longview, working some things out. But one of the things that they would like a decision on from us is whether or not we are committing to allowing them to take over our therapeutic courts. And I just let Michael know we're not ready to make that decision at this point, but we will have further continued conversations about that. I would say that our decision on the therapeutic courts is probably one of the things that's hinging on whether or not that whole situation will move forward.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Sorry, guys, I can't help but ask questions. And Steve, this is for you. And you actually heard it brought up at the homeless task force meeting, the last one I could attend, because my husband's been in the hospital and he's been really sick. So I've been out of the picture for a while. But the one question that was brought up by a lady it was a very good question that left thinking about this was, granted, we really need to take care of our citizens that can't have the help. We really need to do that, and I'm all for it. Don't get me wrong on that. I truly am for that. But if we have a private entity come in to build this building and take them, and you're aware of what I'm going to say, they're going to be free to bring in people from Seattle and Portland and anywhere else, okay? And then they will treat them. Granted, they will treat them. When these people have been treated, where are they going to go? Onto the streets of Longview so that our entity, our people, our agencies that we have now functioning to their capacity, I believe, have to take on more? I mean, are we looking at maybe 300 people on our streets of Longview that are going to be special needs that, quite frankly, our city really isn't going to be able to handle a large amount of people that need that much care. Granted, they'll be released and they'll be, have been treated, so they should be functional to some capacity, but maybe not totally. And so what are we going to do? Are we going to take and, well, we can't, I mean, we can't take Seattle and Portland's and anyone else out of their cities burden. We just can't afford to do that. So my thoughts are, if we do this, because again, our people need to be treated. And if we can get somebody in to treat them, that's awesome. But put in a caveat to say that if we do take in from another city, then after they're treated, they get sent back to that city. They don't stay here. Because we can't do that. We can't have our citizens overwhelmed. Anyway, that was just a thought for you guys.
Yeah, that's been brought up in conversations with Emerald City, and they actually do have a plan
Good.
in place for moving people back to where their place of origin is, so to speak. So there is they do have a plan to take people back to where they came from if they're bringing them in here. The caveat to that is that because it's a voluntary program, people can just walk out if they want to. And to your point, that is correct, that if those people ended up on government programs within the county, then that would put a strain on our service providers here. That is true. I don't know that a lot of people are probably fully aware of this. It's been brought up in the paper a couple of times. It's been said that a lot of the people that are roaming our streets, and I think we need to distinguish a couple of things here. We're talking about the people that that we see roaming our streets, high mental issues, that's the people, the demographic that we're talking about that would create this issue. There are a lot of other people who have mental illness and substance abuse issues and things that are seeking treatment voluntarily, that are utilizing the services from the providers to get better. So we're talking about a specific group of people with regards to your point that you're bringing up here. We already bring in a lot of people. I know that this is contended by a lot of people, but I'm speaking from personal experience on this. For 3.5 years, bought bus tickets, bought train tickets, and fixed people's cars to send them back home. If I did that for 10 people, 4 out of those 10, that's what I was doing for, if I was helping them. So people can't argue with me on that because I personally experienced it. We already are bringing in people into our community, and those people are putting strains on our service providers. You can tell by the amount of money that is continually being requested by our service providers, it continues to increase because they're serving more people. So, and if you look at the numbers of the homelessness that we have within the county, it stayed pretty steady. But if you look at the number of people that we're helping, according to the numbers, the number of people that are staying homeless or being created as homeless is outpacing the number of people that we're helping. The numbers just show that. We can't stay at 350 homeless people for the last 3 years and say that we're helping 266 families buy homes and get into homes and to get into permanent housing and to get into those types of situations. So the number of people that are in that situation is outpacing the number of people that we're helping. That is because there are people that are being brought to our county, that are coming to our county and utilizing those services. People can argue that all day long, but I know that that's true.
So then, besides yourself, which I compliment you for taking these people and giving them transportation away from our cities, what else can we do?
So what my point to that is that if we have a facility here for those people,
Mhm.
then at least they're getting help. It all goes back to it's voluntarily though. We can't push a chain because eventually you're going to end up dragging that chain. So we can only help those who want help. Now there's programs that are involuntary, which means we're taking people's rights away and you have to go through the court system and that type of thing. But ultimately, what it boils down to is in my conversations with Emerald City says, look, we only want to go to places that want us to be there. That the communities are accepting of the services that we're offering and that they want us to be there. It's obvious that there's an issue in Cowlitz County, but if you guys don't want us there, we're not going to go.
Yeah.
And so that's what we need to decide. Do we want that type of a service provider in our community? Knowing that they're going to be, the only way to make it sustainable
Yeah, I know.
and financially viable for them is to bring people in also. So
Well, and I
I
understand.
need to, can we pick the, I'm butting into our
public hearing.
Oh,
public
okay.
hearing and I
Oh,
need to
okay.
do that.
Sorry.
I hate to do that to you because it's a good conversation. Maybe we can pick it up after this public
Okay.
hearing.
Thank you, Steve, for
Okay.
explaining that.
Ready for me? Good morning, Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director. Today, we have a public hearing on our fourth quarter budget amendment. And we also are, the hearing involves establishing a new fund. It's called the Sheriff Equipment and Technology Fund. And so we have proposed several budget amendments. This is, like I said, this is our fourth quarter. This is typical. We go through and we adjust and we look at things that were unanticipated as far as revenue and expenses, and we make adjustments for those. For the general fund, I'll summarize. We basically are increasing our ending fund balance, $346,392. That's made up of many different line items that are going up, some are going down. And primarily, one of the larger ones is our district court reduced some of their budget line items for items that they reviewed and said they no longer need as much judge pro tem budget, for example. And so their total was a decrease of $300,008. We also had some things like not requiring a transfer to the shooting range this year for $75,000. So those are some of our larger ones. And then in our revenue and general fund, we made some adjustments to increase several of our line items related to our facility billings to various different areas. So that's a summary of what's the budget amendments that we've made for general fund. We also, in our health and human services, have several, it looks like a lot, but it's just lines that they're increasing or decreasing based upon their programmatic charges. And they are also trying to prepare for closing down a fund that will happen in the 2026 budget. They're transitioning funds that were in fund number 14101, which will now be in 14001. So, and they also looked at if they had any new state contracts and made adjustments based upon that. The only other large change was related to our tourism fund. And on our tourism fund, we used to have a fund called Cumulative Fund. That was a fund where we split the lodging tax, 50% went there and 50% went to the tourism fund for the purposes of maintaining and operating the tourist facility that was at the Johnson Ridge. That's no longer in place, so there's no longer a need for the cumulative reserve fund. And so we stopped those revenue streams. They're now 100% going to tourism. And therefore, we need to disperse the ending fund balance in the cumulative fund. And that was a total of $915,333. So that will increase the fund balance for our tourism fund They're going to use a little bit of that fund balance to engage in a marketing study, and that's a total of about $118,000. But otherwise, they've increased their fund balance for the tourism fund significantly because of the cumulative reserve. The only other thing that we did significant is that we also made an adjustment to our bond fund. We originally, the PFD had a bond payment that they refinanced this year. It was like in February or April, something like that. And when they refinanced it, we need to adjust the budget down because they're no longer having that large of a bond payment. It went from 487,800 to an annual for this year of 116,369. So we wanted to make that adjustment both on the revenue and expense side. And then our water sewer reserve fund. This is where we have the capital projects. There was budgeted for a $2.2 million project from the federal government, and that's going to now occur in 2026. So we want to remove that from 2025. And we also had ARPA projects slated. Those are also, some of them are going to, the expenses will move to 2026, 869,000 basically. What else? Had some other smaller increases. We also went through and looked at our IT fund, and we trued up the beginning and ending fund balance for IT operating to the tune of 569,000. And we also did the exact same thing looking at their IT reserve fund. We revised the beginning and ending fund balance up by $971,000. And then establishment of the new sheriff reserve fund, we're transferring in $932,931 to that fund. So we recorded those transfers in and established budgets for them to be able to buy some of their equipment later this year if they needed to. So those are some of the major changes that we've proposing in this fourth quarter amendment.
With all the pluses and minuses, we end up 346,000 in change.
Improvement in
Improvement, yeah.
improvement in fund balance for general fund, which is good.
Okay.
It's a good note for me to go out on.
Yeah.
This will be hopefully my last budget amendment. So that's all.
Now you're making me
That's
sad.
everything.
Yeah.
That's everything I have for
Okay.
that. And I have some handouts if anybody wants to see all the details.
Okay. Any other questions? I know we went over pretty good yesterday. Let me open public hearing meeting if there's anything from the public.
Thank you for your report. My question deals with this, you called new sheriff equipment reserve fund. And I think I heard you say you were transferring 937,000 into that fund. Is that what I heard?
Hold on, I'm going to get you the exact number.
And my real question is, this isn't new. The sheriffs have always needed to have equipment. So how was it sponsored before versus now having a brand new fund?
Okay.
So general.
Yeah, I have the answers. So yes, you're right. It's $932,931. They have traditionally had parts reserves set aside in IT for replacement of all their laptops that reside in their vehicles, their rugged laptops. And then they also had the radio equipment being reserved annually in the motor pool. And so we've pulled the funds out of IT, we pull the funds out of motor pool, and they also contributed some of their own operating funds, $150,000 this year, to establish this fund so that they can have more control over the funds and the expenditures and the timing of those expenditures versus relying on IT and motor pool.
Okay, so my perception is that it's not adding any new expenditures, just shifting funds around and creating a
Yes.
specific fund.
Right, and creating a more accountable, solid one fund for all of those things.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning. One question that I have is, I can't remember the amount, but there was a considerable amount set aside for marketing of tourism.
Mhm.
Now, if we didn't spend that, because I do believe that we, at this point in time, we have enough people that know about Longview, Kelso and the surrounding areas, could that money be used in another program and make it, I mean, are we saving money by not marketing or studying the marketing?
Well, I don't think I could speak to the need and the drive for having the marketing study, but I can tell you that the funds are earmarked only for tourism-related projects, operations, as well as facilities. So those funds that were transferred to their fund balance can be used for additional grants, for different events, for facilities, things like that, as well as operating funds.
So good. So instead of the marketing, they could go into operational. That's if they weren't used for marketing. Okay, that might be a thought because I think that we've got enough people coming into our area right now.
Yeah, I think the whole impetus was to try to consolidate individual cities looking at their own marketing and looking at a program that, from what I understand, they could look at everything everybody was doing, study that, and find, is there a way to be more efficient, to do better outreach by consolidating some of that.
Okay, thank you.
Some of those, just kind of give you a flavor of where some of that goes is Planners Days will apply for some of that stuff. Laluska Foundation does. What's the building where we were out in Castle Rock over by the ball field?
Sports complex.
That we've contributed to help
Okay.
do some of that. So it goes to different things, and it can be for some structure stuff, or it can be for an event, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for explaining it.
Any other questions from the public? Make sure I don't have anybody online, not seeing. Mike, did you have a question, or are you just standing? Okay.
Just standing.
Okay. Yeah.
In listening to those numbers on there, it seems like the most significant savings come from the drug court. And anytime any government, portion of any government decides to not use all the money that's been allocated to them, and I'm not just looking at the Cowlitz County Board of Commissioners, I'm talking every facet of government in the United States. Normally, they don't like to hand money back because the rule of thumb is if you hand money back, they're going to give you less next year. But anybody that hands any money back is to be applauded. And I think that really needs to be, looked at when the budget goes through, because that just doesn't happen. And that's $300,000 is a big chunk of change for somebody to send back. That's a heck of a lot of money. And I think there'd be applauded for the fact that they did that, no matter what they changed their operation. And they had to do that knowing that it's going to affect the budgets in the future, because obviously they didn't need that 300,000 this year. They're not going to need it next year. And then you start, somebody will, hey, let's see what else they got, since they're willing to cut back, because everybody always tries to defend their turf. I think it's a great day when they sent that money back. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, we'll close the public comment part of it. And you would need a motion from us to approve that budget amendment, so I'll entertain that.
But before we do that, Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Sure.
Just the way you just explained the transfer money for the sheriff's office so that they would have more control over their IT funds, does that mean they're not gonna use IT anymore? Because
No.
if we're transferring that out, and those were originally funds to pay for their IT services, what does that mean now?
Yeah, no, they would still utilize IT. It was specifically for the recycling or the refresh of their rugged laptops, those devices. They still have the need for IT services to support them in the operation of those machines, as well as the software, things like that. Yeah, so that it was specifically more long-term equipment, large purchases where they would purchase in bulk. Like, for example, they purchased 50 of those devices this year because it's on a refresh cycle. They refreshed them, I believe, every 5 years. And so they set aside a little bit of money every year in order to refresh those. So that's what this fund is, just equipment and technology replacement equipment.
So it did not eliminate their IT costs.
No, it did not eliminate their IT cost. And in fact, they were contributing every year to the tune of, for the rugged laptops alone, about $70,000 to be able to put that money aside. So when the 5 years came, they had the sufficient funds to replace all those rugged laptops.
Okay,
Yeah, if I remember right, I think they said it was for the laptops and the docking stations inside the
Yep.
cars.
Well,
Yep.
Yeah.
and you remember I tried to get 3 extra tasers out of them for commissioners, but they didn't buy it.
Yeah, so yeah, so it's IT type equipment, but other technology equipment that they use, like drones, the radios, the tasers, things like that.
Yeah.
okay. Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the budget amendments.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the budget amendment. We've already had public comment, so I'll take it straight to a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Kathy.
Okay, I'm gonna celebrate and have a Tootsie Roll.
We got a few minutes before 10. Flo, did you want to continue that? Do you have any more conversation, or do you feel like you got your answer? Okay. Okay. And
Now, this is going back to the question that we were talking about, correct? Okay, and I think I want to applaud that you take these people personally to whatever convenience they have to go to another city. I just feel that, we have to have some control, if it's a private enterprise, of how many they're going to put on our streets, even though we do try to get them to move out. Because I personally feel both cities are under, Portland and Seattle, are under tremendous stress right now. We're talking maybe billions of money. And they don't want that. They want to get rid of these people. And I'm thinking that, they're going to see this as a dumping ground. And I can understand that because they don't want their problem. We don't want it either. And even though we can, we have to have strict guidelines. In other words, if we do get them in, then they get a bus ticket or whatever back. And that's because I just don't want Longview, Kelso to be a dumping ground. But you are addressing that, correct? And
Oh,
you're-
yeah. And it's a valid concern, Flo, and it's one that they have felt that they have a way to mitigate that to the best of their ability. They've also said that they're planning on dedicating a certain percentage of their beds to Cowlitz County, which, I mean, I would say that there's a lot of gray area, being a for-profit entity. If Cowlitz County is giving you everything that they got and you still got the 10% of the beds that you allocated for Cowlitz County available, and you get 3 people from Clark County, you're gonna fill the beds. I mean, that's just the way it goes. I understand that. So there's some caveats to what they're willing to do, and I understand that. But the bottom line, I mean, all this conversation about all these issues are moot if we, as a community, decide we don't want that facility in our county.
That is true, but is there any other way? Because I do understand that we have people that seriously need help. I mean, do we put them in the hospital for that period? I mean, they don't want them there for that period of time, which is a long period of time. These people, a lot of people will never outgrow their problems. So it's
What's
a
it-
long-term thing.
We got a double-edged sword here. On one hand, we want to help the mentally
Yeah.
ill and we want to focus on Cowlitz County. At the same time, if you're asking a private business to do that and they build a facility for 100 people and we only have 80 here to service them and they have 20 beds left, they're gonna go out to try and fill those beds if somebody else can bring them. But they did make a commitment that if they transported somebody in from outside the county, they would transport them back out
Did do
at
that.
the conclusion of their assistance or their services. So, but outside there is the risk, like Steve was saying earlier, that they talked about, because there is, if they're not, what's the term I want, forced to stay there, if they're not being held against their will, and it can be a walk-in, walk-out service, they could walk out and be in Cowlitz County. So there is a small risk of a number of people being able to do that. But if we're trying to build a facility to service Cowlitz County and say only Cowlitz County people can be there, you're probably forcing, a private business isn't going to be able to do that.
I understand that. I understand that. I'm just hoping that you have the guidelines, and apparently you're telling me that you do. That, I mean, because they need to make money to be able to function. I understand that. But again, we don't want, I mean, I'm talking like maybe 300, 400 people that we don't have the resources to take care of, put into our communities. And we can't have that either. So, but you're telling me that that restriction would be given to that Evergreen Enterprise, so that if they do come in from another city, they are taken out. Correct?
Yes, that's what I understood.
Yeah.
Okay, that would, I go, because again, we have to take care of our people, but with that, then, okay, I'm all for it. That would be a good thing. I just don't want what I was fearing to have happen. So,
The thing is that there's already a strain on our services to the level that a lot of people aren't aware of. I'll give you an example. If our deputies or police, they arrest somebody, take them to the jail, and they get an evaluation that says that they have mental illness, mental health, mental issues, whatever the situation is mentally, they get put into the jail. We have now eliminated a third of our capacity because that individual has to stay in a cell by themselves. And so that puts a strain on our services to the level that we're sometimes not able to take everybody into the jail that needs to be taken in.
Yeah.
Same thing at the hospital. They only have so many beds there. So we're recycling these people in essence through our own system, through the own programs that we have, because we don't have any way to take care of them in the situation that they're in. So that's what I'm saying. We need to look at the strain that we're already putting on our services and asking ourselves, do we want to continue down this path? And if so, it's not going to get any better. I mean,
Yeah, I
everything
totally-
has its positives and its negatives, and we need to, as a community, decide, is this worth it to us?
I totally agree. I totally agree with that. But and that is for the long-term care for these people. I'm talking about the people that are marginal, that they can get some treatment, and then they might think, well, all right, I think he can function well enough to be put into the community. Okay, that community should be where they came from. That's
I
all I'm
agree.
saying. If it's long-term, they're not going to be a problem. They're not going to be on our streets. And again, we really do need to take care of our people that are like that. And so I'm all for that. And I just don't want them, when they've been treated, especially if they're marginal, because they will need further treatment usually down the line. That was my major in college. you know, so I do know a lot about mental illness and other, it's sometimes not completely treatable, but they can function to some degree. Now, those are the people that I worry about, because when they can function to some degree, they will be let out and they need someplace to go. So it sounds like you've got a plan, so that sounds good. I'm happy with that. And you answered my questions, and so I'm happy with that. I appreciate that, because again, we're pretty well maxed in our community, taking care of our own, but we do need what you're talking about, because we do have people that really cannot function
Yeah.
in society.
So I have a question for you, Flo, and this is a clarifying question that I really want to know the answer to this. This is not a condescending question. Anybody in the group, please help me understand this. Because I've had this said to me multiple times. We need to take care of our own. We need to make sure that our people are taken care of.
Correct.
What does that mean?
Okay, if you're a Cowlitz County citizen that you've lived here, you have lived here, you haven't come in within the last week, then you are our own. You've lived here, you've paid taxes, you've come from a family that has lived here, paid taxes. You've been a product of a foundation of our community. Okay, you've been a product. Either you were born here from parents that have been here, or you've been here a number of years. I don't know if you want to put a number on that years, but you didn't come last week. You didn't come 2 days ago. That's what I'm talking about, our own.
So I struggle with that. And let me tell you why. The paying taxes in our community. What kind of taxes do you think those people are paying in our community?
They've paid property taxes. They've paid consumption taxes of either gas or food or not food. Anything that they've purchased, you know, whether it be lumber or anything, they've paid into the community. They even had a job where they've worked, they've promoted, you know, some kind of a industry because they've worked in the community. They've had a job. They are our own because they have given back to our community.
See, the way that I look at that, and this is just from personal experience, is we all struggle. And it's a human problem. It's not a Cowlitz County citizen problem. And when my daughter had the illness, the mental illness and the substance abuse problem that she had, I was grateful that there was a place in Seattle that took us in, and that they didn't have the attitude that we need to take care of our own first.
But see,
To me,
they're,
that attitude that a lot of people have is we need to take care of our own. At some point, I wasn't an our own either. I moved here. And so I don't have distinct lines. I'm not looking at Cowlitz County boundaries and saying, I'm not going to help you. You need help, and we have the services to help you. But because you're not from here, I'm not going to do that.
Okay.
I struggle with that.
okay, let me go on to your what you've just said. All right. Seattle has much deeper pockets than what Longview Kelso has, our community, our county. Okay. When we help, and it's just like the immigration policy that people are concerned about. Yes, you want to help people, but if you are endangering because you're not taking care of your people that live here, then what are you doing? Like you say, if you took your daughter to Seattle, their pockets, their community, their counties have much deeper pockets than we do. We don't have the facilities.
It's all tax dollars. I mean, it doesn't matter what community you're in. You're talking about tax dollars. Somebody comes through here and they buy 1 tank of gas, they've paid taxes. I mean, I understand what you want to do to try and draw a line.
I'm
but
trying to, because I'm looking at the agencies that are trying to help the people that are out there needing help, and they're struggling. Okay, they're not all, I mean, some of them are not struggling that much, but some of them are. And what I'm trying to say is if we're overloaded with like 300 people, they won't be able to handle, then what do those people do? Where do they go?
I
Oak
don't
Village
envision-
isn't there anymore.
Out of all of this, I don't envision anybody putting up billboards on the highway that says, come to Cowlitz County, we got a few extra beds. I mean, I don't see that happening.
Come on, guys, you know what I'm saying.
I understand.
I'm just saying I don't want our community to be overwhelmed by people that we
None of us
wouldn't
do.
have to be.
None of us do.
Okay, thank you, because you're making me sound like I'm ogre and I don't care about these people, and I do care about them, but I want them to go to a facility that has the ability to take them in and do the problem and take care of that problem. Where that if we come here, we can only take care of them, only afford to take care of them for a short period of time. And they need more than that. They need,
If we
okay, I'm
can,
sorry. Thank you.
is that okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else for us? Okay, I'm gonna adjourn our meeting and let's give 5 minutes and we'll get Board of Health out here and start that one up, okay? We'll adjourn.
Good morning. Welcome to the Cowlitz County Board of Health meeting. We're going to start this at, looks like 10:05. Thank you all for coming. First order of business is to review the minutes. Minutes have all been sent out a couple weeks ago. I'd entertain a motion to accept them.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Rader says to accept the minutes. All in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay. Minutes are accepted. All right, the first order for the new business, we have a small presentation from Gina from the HHS about solid waste complaint response. Thank you for coming.
Okay, Gina James, Health and Human Services. I'm gonna try to remember how to, I'm gonna try to remember how to do this. You might need it first. Oh.
We had a few early technical issues, just getting some slides loaded.
Okay, okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, so we, looking at, for our quarterly update, we wanted to focus on one of our areas of work today. So we do a number of different things in health and human services. And today we wanted to talk a little bit about our solid waste regulation. So we have a couple of different components related to solid waste regulation, like permitting solid waste facilities. What we wanted to talk today about is what happens when we get complaints and how we address that. Just to start off, this work falls under the Board of Health, and through our health officer, it falls under some of the duties to take action to maintain health and sanitation in our community, control and prevent spread of dangerous or infectious disease, and prevent, control, or abate nuisances detrimental to public health. Public health being the key word in terms of when we are addressing these issues, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. We also have a county code related to solid waste management, so a lot of this work falls under the purview of that. So what is solid waste? So the definition within our code is all putrescible and non-putrescible solid and semi-solid waste. Most often what we see is garbage like food debris, tires, old furniture, clothing, mattresses, those types of things is what we most often see in terms of solid waste. How does HHS get involved? We receive complaints. And so just want to clarify, we are not driving around looking for solid waste issues. We receive complaints. They can come in via a telephone call, an email. We have an online form. It could be someone that stops at the counter. So basically, any way you can contact us, we can take your complaint in. And then from there, we will, our first step is to verify the complaint. And so, you know, we get a lot of concerns brought to our attention. They are not all concerns that we're able to address. And so that's our first step, is to verify if it is a solid waste issue that we are able to address. And again, we're looking for that public health risk piece. So our first step is to do a drive-by from the public roadway. So if we can see the property from the public roadway, we will drive by and take some pictures, again, looking for the public health risk in that. So, you know, things, you know, people are allowed to have all kinds of things on their property. And sometimes described as eyesores or things like that. People are allowed to have things on their property. what we would be concerned about is if it is posing a risk to public health, where something is, you know, creating issues with vector control, if there's, you know, those types of things around, if there's leaky hazardous materials, that type of thing. So those would be things that we would be looking for. If we're not able to verify the complaint, and that we might do outreach to the property owner or the complainant, it's often a nearby neighbor. Sometimes they'll give us permission to come on. And so we'll try to do what we can to do our due diligence to make sure there's not a public health issue with the solid waste. But if we just can't verify it, or if we drive by and don't find anything, or we talk to the property owner, go on site, and there's not an issue with solid waste, then we will close the complaint at that time. If it is verified, then we move on to contacting the property owner, and we set goals for cleanup. And so what that can look a lot of different ways depending on the scenario and what we're looking at and the amount of items. But we'll kind of go through with the property owner what we're concerned about in terms of public health risk, and talk with them about ways they can address it and clean it up. And then we'll, like I said, we'll set some goals and create a plan for that cleanup and what that looks like. Most often what we see is voluntary compliance. And so, like I said, we'll monitor the situation, monitor progress, go back and make additional site visits. If we set a goal of addressing a particular area on the property, then we'll go back and confirm that they've addressed that particular area. Maybe then they're moving on to another area, and that would be the next phase. Most often, we do get some pretty good voluntary compliance. If we're not seeing that progress and that cleanup happening, we can move to issuing citations, and we work with the courts, and that's a fine process. Like I said, most often we see a lot of great voluntary compliance in those situations.
Gina, is that, when it gets to the point where it's a fine deal, is that under, can HHS says we're doing a fine, or does the prosecuting attorney say, yeah, we'd support a fine here? Or who has authority to actually say, hey, we're going to fine you? Does that rest with you or rest with them?
We do. So Carol might know a little bit more about the details. Let her come up.
Good morning, Carol Harrison, Health and Human Services. We don't issue the actual citations. We actually used to, but we don't any longer. I believe our partnership with the Sheriff's Office, they help us on those. We have a deputy that we pay a partial piece of his salary, so he helps us with those, and then it goes through the court system like any other citation would.
Okay, thanks.
You were just asking for a friend, right? Right?
Yeah, yeah. Ask him for.
Yeah. So that's kind of the process that we go through. Like I said, most often we get that voluntary compliance and we're able to work through that with individuals. And we see them, you know, working on cleaning up and what that looks like. And again, they all look very different. And so what we are looking for and monitoring is the solid waste that may be having an impact on environmental or public health risk. And so it could be that we close a complaint and there still may be some stuff about, but those items may not be posing a risk to public health or the environment. So I just want to make that clarification. And then we have some pictures to show. So this particular example, this one has 2 before pictures. This one's in progress. And so this was when we received the complaint, and we went out and on the public roadway took some pictures of what that looks like. And so you can see tires and garbage and different varying debris on the property itself. Let's see, we have one more here. So here again, you can see some garbage cans and some things filled up and piled up. So as I said, this one is in progress, and so this is a slightly different view, but you can see some area has been cleaned up. There's still some work there in the back by the structure, but like I said, it often is like identifying a section and kind of working our way through and working with the property owner on what that looks like.
So if this was on a private road, would you have any jurisdiction?
So again, we sometimes will reach out to the property owner, or often the complaint is coming from a neighbor. In some cases, the neighbor has said, yeah, come on site, come on my property and come see what we're looking at. And so sometimes it happens that way too.
How about a county road? Rural, not in the city.
So
It's
yeah, county road.
not private property, just right off the side of the road.
Yeah, oftentimes that is what it is just off of the public road. Yeah.
So that's for you guys too.
Yeah, we could go and look and we'll drive by and see what we can see from the public roadway. Mhm.
So I have a question. You mentioned determine whether it's a public health threat,
Mhm.
right? So, and you don't need to go into detail at all on about this, but I'm assuming then that you must have a cause and effect list of what would be considered a public health threat. Like you mentioned vectors. So obviously if there's garbage causing a lot of standing water that could breed mosquitoes, yes, public health.
Mhm.
But I'm thinking in my brain is thinking about tires. Okay, tires that just accumulate. Is that a public health threat or an environmental threat? So I'm sure you must have some sort of algorithm,
Yeah.
something that you use to determine that. Is that correct?
We have some of what we see as like the most common, and there's some that are very clear, right? Like you said, public health issues. And sometimes there's, piles of oily rags that are getting rained on and it's going right, not in any type of container and it's going right into the ground and things like that. If we get into those situations where it's more of a gray area, we certainly would consult Dr. Krager and talk about what that looks like. This is what we saw. This is, it's a little bit of a gray area. And we would talk through that with Dr. Krager and may involve legal at some point too, just to make sure we are on
And
the
the
same page.
tires is a big deal. Like you said, the water pools in those tires and causes, mosquitoes and everything. So we try every year or so to work in partnership with WSU Extension and the Department of Ecology to host a tire event. We've done them out at the headquarters landfill under that big kind of shop structure before, and we collect thousands of tires. And lots of times those folks have a special invitation to come. So we might be working with one of these properties and we'd be, hey, we're having a tire event next weekend. Here's your personal invitation. Because it's free and they don't have to pay to just get rid of those tires. So
Great. I appreciate that answer. And what it did for me, thank you, is connect the dots. Okay, how does this tie back to Dr. Krieger? So perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. Our next example, we have 2 before pictures. So you can see this is kind of an aerial view of a property. This particular one has quite a few motorhomes, which I'm going to touch on just briefly. The same with vehicles. Those items, then and of themselves, may not be a solid waste complaint in terms of looking at public health risk. Again, people are allowed to have these things on their property. What we would be more concerned about is what kind of condition is it in? Is there parts to it that are leaking and exposed and that kind of thing? Or is there garbage piled inside of, those types of things? So I just want to make that clear distinction. Having a vehicle on your property is not necessarily a solid waste complaint. So this is an aerial view of this property, and you can see, we're going to do this is kind of zoomed in, so you can see quite a bit of garbage and debris scattered around this particular site, maybe some old appliances, things like that.
and I want to mention, we don't have a drone. These photos, I believe, are compliments of the sheriff's office.
Okay, so then our after picture here, you can see there was quite a bit of cleanup that happened on this site. A lot of the garbage was removed. Again, there's still a couple motorhomes, which may be perfectly fine to have on site. And so, but really a lot of cleanup done there to get all of that debris and garbage picked up. So this is a great example of that voluntary compliance that we see a lot of the time. Okay, one more. This is a before picture of a site. And quite a bit of garbage you can see stacked up there around and overflowing in containers and different things, maybe also some appliances, things like that. And then this is the after. So quite a difference there in what was cleaned up. And so that's, again, some of the work, and sometimes it takes, you know, a month or two. Other times it might take a little bit longer depending on the site and how the property owner, how much progress they're able to do. But if we continue to see that voluntary compliance, and we work with them on what that looks like and cleaning that up. And again, it may not be everything on the property, but we try to make sure we're addressing all of those pieces that are that risk to public health or environment in terms of solid waste. We also address liquid waste complaints as well. I'm just going to mention that too, but most often those are related to our septic permitting work in that sense, sewage, proper sewage disposal and things like that. So they are different in that sense, but today we're just focusing on solid waste. So
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
What kind of conversation, what is that like? What's the conversation like? Are there like, hey, if you don't do this, we're going to do this? Or, because I could use that conversation for my kids in their rooms. That's pretty impressive.
yeah,
Call
me
Tina.
too. Me too. There's definitely some solid waste hazard going on in my older son's bedroom. Yeah, I mean, it really varies. Like I said, most often we're really lucky. I think we are able to have those conversations with people, and again, we're pretty reasonable about it. You know, as like I mentioned, it's people can have things on their property. We just want to make sure we're looking at things that are, you know, yucky and oozy, and want to make sure we get those things cleaned up. And so a lot of times people are open to that. And, you know, it's to our benefit that we're able to make a plan, and we make a plan that they agree to. So again, that can look very differently. You know, and sometimes it doesn't happen as quick as folks might like it to, but in terms of getting an area cleaned up and achieving that voluntary compliance and working with the property owner and having, you know, a good relationship with them, so they are wanting to, you know, clean it up and work with us. Most often it's a okay experience in terms of doing that with somebody. So
And I think there's a lot of different scenarios too. Like it's not always just the property owner let stuff piled up. Sometimes it might be, you know, dad's house and dad passed away, so the family has to take care of it. Or you might have landlord tenant where there has to be an eviction process. So it can vary on that level as well.
I think one of the things that stands out to me is there's a difference between aesthetics and public health threat. And, you know, I think that that's important to address that with people, and it sounds like you do that.
yeah, it is important. Like I said, people are allowed to have things, and what we might like to look at may not be what other people like to look at. But as long as it's not, you know, creating issues that go beyond and start affecting neighbors and things, then they may be able to have those things. So
Maybe that's the way to approach teenage bedrooms.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. Anybody else have any more questions for them? Thank you. That cleaning some things up. Yeah, I think it's important to have your county clean, both visually and for sanitation purposes.
So were all these cleaned up by the landowners?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know. That's another good point. We don't do any of the cleanup ourselves. It's all just working with the property owners. And they'll, you know, and sometimes they'll clean up, they'll do a dump run. They might bring us the receipts and say, look how much I got rid of. And then at our next, you know, site visit, we'll go and verify that. So yeah, the property owners do all of the cleanup themselves. Yeah.
Do you see people, once they get to this point, do they go back to what it was before often, or do they maintain it?
Yeah, I think that can happen. And like, as Carol mentioned, there's a lot of different scenarios. And so, sometimes where there's individuals that have some different challenges and, like to keep a lot of things. And so we may see that build up again over time. And so, then we may get involved to get another complaint and go back out. And hopefully, maybe we've come in earlier than the time before and it's not as much or not as big of a pile. So yeah, that can happen.
Depends on how many teenage kids they got.
True.
Okay, thank you very much again.
Yeah, thank you.
Next up, we have some health officer questions. Dr. Krager is here. Thank you for coming. I spoke with a few constituents and there's been a lot of news on some of the subjects. And so we asked a couple questions to Dr. Krager. There were several questions, but for today, we're just going to try and address two. And Dr. Krager prepared a couple slides for us to look at. The question I asked the first one was the federal government has recently indicated there seems to be a link between pregnant women taking Tylenol or acetaminophen and that causing autism or other problems. This was based on a Harvard study that had come out in August this year. It was a large study, and I asked Dr. Krager what advice would he provide for the women of Cowlitz County. So thank you for coming and talking to us.
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, so Steve Krieger, I'm the health officer for Cowlitz County. I'm happy to be here to answer these questions because I do know people are curious about them. And I think there's just generally confusion, so hopefully I can clear a few things up. So I appreciate the opportunity. Okay, how do I do this? Sorry, I'm trying to figure out the slide thing. I'm trying to, it's not working. Up, down, oh, I got it. Okay, I got it. Slide up. Wait. Aha, okay, so yes, here's your questions, Kelly, that you sent me. And then the second one we're gonna cover is what about vaccines, and the question related to autism. Okay, so regarding acetaminophen, and this is gonna be, oh shoot, it kind of, you can't see it very well, unfortunately. Let me see if I can zoom. Oh, that what I was trying to highlight got completely blocked out. Okay, so regarding acetaminophen, just the first thing I want to start with. This is from the FDA shortly after the government kind of made these announcements. This was the actual guidance from the Food and Drug Administration about what this potential link between acetaminophen and autism and ADHD. I think Bailey's gonna. Thank you. Okay, perfect. So they talk about that. This was a letter sent out to basically all physicians in the country. And what bothers me a little bit is that it seems like sometimes we get contradicting statements. So I do think it's really interesting to look clearly what the FDA is telling physicians, which is I highlighted. So they talk a little bit about the studies that show a link, but then they say very clearly a causal relationship has not been established, and there are contrary studies in the scientific literature. Ongoing research, and this is the part that I think is really important for practical take-home messages. Clinicians should consider minimizing the use of acetaminophen during pregnancy for low-grade fevers, but balanced with the fact that acetaminophen is the safest over-the-counter alternative in pregnancy among all analgesics, which is an antipyretic, so pain medicine and fever reducers. Aspirin and ibuprofen have well-documented adverse impacts on the fetus. So that, to me, is kind of the take-home message. We should be cautious, but acetaminophen is still our best option. And I I'm going to go over a couple studies, including the one you sent me from Harvard, and talk about just weighing the evidence a little bit. So let's go to the next slide. And I know I have a number of slides, but I'm pretty sure we'll be able to get through it quickly. Okay. So up to 50% of pregnant women use acetaminophen, also known as Tylenol. And there are some links, both with autism and ADHD, that have been shown in some studies. But there's conflicting research. So I'm going to talk about it and kind of what we do with that. Let's go to the next slide. This is probably the most important thing that we do in epidemiology, is figuring out what's a connection, also known as a correlation, and what's a direct cause. So connection, correlation is two things happening together at the same time. An example of a correlation and not a direct cause is ice cream sales and drowning deaths both increase in the summer. Those lines are basically, perfectly correlated. But we know that one of those is not causing the other. One thing we have proven over time and with lots of studies is smoking causing lung cancer. So the critical point is that there's this hidden factor, which in this case is hot weather for the ice cream and the drowning deaths. So there's this thing called a confounder. I'm just going to call it a hidden factor. It's something else that creates this false kind of connection between one thing and another. There was a period of time, 80s, early 90s, where we actually thought drinking coffee was associated with pancreatic cancer because there was a clear connection. People who drank more coffee also had higher rates of pancreatic cancer. And then when we did better research and looked at other hidden factors, found out that coffee drinking, especially at this time, was strongly associated with smoking. People would smoke, have a cigarette, and drink their coffee in the morning, and that was a pretty common practice. So the actual direct cause of that increase in pancreatic cancer was smoking and not coffee drinking. All right, let's go to the next slide. But these are things, this is confusing, right? When we do this, we find this connection. It's not always clear what the exact cause is. So when trying to find a direct cause, there's a few different ways. We can look for those hidden factors. That means we call controlling for it. So adjusting the data to make sure that that hidden factor is accounted for. Sometimes we do like sibling comparison studies. So we're looking at people in the same environment, but let's say one was exposed to one thing and the other one wasn't. And then at least we have, those shared environments and most of their genetics are the same, and then we can get a better comparison. Sometimes we just need to understand how something happens. Just because there's a connection doesn't mean it makes sense that there's a connection or that would actually cause an effect. And then a lot of times we need consistency over time, repeated studies reaching the same conclusion. So let's go to the next slide. Oh, just as the FDA letter pointed, and I'm sorry that this is not very easy to see on the screen, but the other caution that I have for pregnant women is the other medications we have for pain and inflammation have lots more side effects, especially for fetuses. So ibuprofen, which is known as Advil or Motrin, Aleve, aspirin, are known as NSAIDs, and we know significant harm, kidney problems, low amniotic fluid, heart problems, preterm birth, all these things are associated with those medications. So we don't want pregnant women to be using those at all if they have pain. All right, next slide, please. Perfect. Okay. So as our chairman mentioned, there was a Mount Sinai Harvard study that was kind of a congregating a number of studies and trying to balance them all and see kind of what the evidence weighed. So they did find, the higher quality studies that they showed stronger connections, but those studies did not look for those family factors that we talked about. The best, go back one slide, perfect. You know, I'm trying not to use like really strong judgmental language on studies, but I will say this study that came out in April 2024 was generally much larger than those other studies, and they used sibling comparisons. So basically, some siblings had their mom took acetaminophen during pregnancy, and then during another sibling's pregnancy, the mom did not take any acetaminophen. And then they looked at, you know, the risk between those two groups. Did the one sibling that was exposed to acetaminophen have a higher risk of autism or ADHD? And did the other one not? And all those connections that they've seen in other studies, they disappeared, which to me suggests that there's other factors at play. There's some other hidden things, and we know a lot of you know, some of the causes of autism spectrum and ADHD. We don't know everything, but we have some good ideas. There was another pretty large study in the Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology in February that showed no risk as well. So we have these kind of competing studies. What do we do with that? Let's go to the next slide. So we talked about this a little bit already, but these are things that could be hidden when we're looking for these connections. Genetics. So parents with certain genes are more likely to use pain medication and have children with neurodevelopmental conditions. You know, you might have a risk. You might have a condition that causes you to take acetaminophen more often during pregnancy. That might be linked to autism. And then we know that fevers, especially really high fevers, are sometimes linked to developmental issues, and people take acetaminophen for fever. All right, let's go to the next slide. So that's why I think this sibling controlled study is really helpful. Same family, you know, obviously not every sibling is raised the exact same way, but most of the things that we can control for are going to share similar things. So when we didn't have those sibling controls in studies, there's that small increase in autism and ADHD rates. And I would note that even those tiny increases would not explain, it would explain a very small number of autism and ADHD cases. And then when we use those sibling controls, those connections disappeared. So to me, I interpret that, and it's not just me, it's, you know, our societies of obstetrics and gynecology and pediatrics, that it's most likely that those original connections, due to shared family factors, were causing these connections, causing a confounder instead of this medication. So all that to say, let's go to the next slide. What does that mean? And this is kind of what I talked about. There's some studies that show connections. Better controlled studies, those connections disappear. We don't have a clear cause and effect. And there's probably other factors that make the most sense when talking about what leads to increased rates of autism and ADHD. There's still, as always with science and research in public health, you know, we don't have a complete picture. You know, there's probably more studies to be done about extremely high doses of acetaminophen. Maybe that is part of a risk. You know, if there is a connection, we don't quite understand why acetaminophen in the body would cause this increased risk. So maybe there's more we can do to understand that. And then, you know, in general, there's always more research to be done. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Let's see, let's try to wrap this up. Oh, we talked about this a little bit. If we don't treat fever and pain, there are potential risks. You know, you release more stress hormones when you're in pain, and high fevers can cause certain risks to the fetus as well. Okay, next slide. Oh, medical decision-making requires balancing known risk. Can you go back one slide? I apologize. Okay, medical decision-making requires balancing known risks against uncertain ones. I think that's a really important point. Okay, next slide, please. So these are our options. So right now, this is what the FDA is saying, is that acetaminophen is still the safest over-the-counter option. As with any medication that we give to anyone, you want to use the lowest effective dose for the shortest amount of time. And always, if you have questions, that's something you have for a provider. And then NSAIDs should not be used, especially after 20 weeks. But really, I would not use at any time during pregnancy. And then there's very rare cases where a low dose aspirin might be appropriate for a pregnant woman. Okay, next slide. Kept thinking I had this. Yes, so this is kind of what ties it all together. So for women in Cowlitz County, use acetaminophen only when needed. It's the safest over-the-counter option. Use carefully, lowest dose for the shortest amount of time. Avoid ibuprofen, naproxen. Talk with your provider. And then there's always other options for pain and sometimes for fever relief, including rest, cool compresses, stretching, that sort of thing. All right, next slide. Takeaways. Okay. Just because there's a connection doesn't mean there's a direct cause. Sometimes people will say correlation does not equal causation. And the best studies we have don't show that there's a direct cause between acetaminophen use during pregnancy and autism and ADHD. There's hidden factors that always matter in these epidemiologic studies. And then we're balancing known versus theoretical risks. So ibuprofen, we know, has risks for a fetus, and acetaminophen, ongoing research, but I think those risks remain unproven. And then everyone obviously has individual decision-making, and working with a healthcare provider is always your best bet. All right, next slide. Did I finish this? Here we go. Okay. I only have a couple more slides about vaccines and autism. I'm just going to go through them, and then if there's any other questions about these, we can talk about it all. So one of the questions that Kelly sent me is, do we see a connection between giving vaccines and autism spectrum disorder? And one of the links that was sent included a list of a lot of studies on PubMed that purported to show a link between vaccines and autism. I found this nice graphic. I wish you could see it better, but essentially it's most of the studies that have claimed to have found a link on the left, and then studies that did not find a link on the right. Let's go to the next slide because we'll talk about balancing this evidence, right? We have all these studies on the left, we have all these studies on the right. I think what's really important when we look at these things, people can, dump a huge list of links to studies, but the quality of that research really matters. So we've talked about some of these already today. Controlling for confounding factors is a quality of a high quality study. Using appropriate comparison groups, following established protocols, and then is peer reviewed and replicable so people can repeat your study. No study is perfect, but there's more flawed studies than others. If you ignore looking for those confounding variables, if you use mismatched time periods, there's just something called p-hacking, which I'm not going to get into, but cherry picking data often. And then sometimes we see studies that are bad enough that they're retracted by their journal. All right, next slide. So all those studies on that left side claiming to show a link between vaccine and autism, about 2/3 were authored by these brothers named David and Michael Geyer. It's really interesting that, 2/3 of these studies came from the same authors. And unfortunately, they've been shown to have flaws in some of their studies. what's interesting is that almost all of their studies focused on thimerosal, which was removed from childhood vaccines in 2004. They've had problems, I guess is what I would say. They created an illegitimate review board of family members for one of their papers. They promoted kind of unproven treatments for autism. Mark Geyer had a medical license, but it was revoked in 12 states. And then David Geyer was not a physician, but he was fined for practicing without a license. So there's problems with a lot of those studies. Let's go to the next slide. And this is what I see, unfortunately, a lot in, it's been happening honestly for over 20 years with these connections between, supposed connections between vaccines and autism, is that things are done backwards, where people have an agenda, they start with a conclusion, and then they try to find evidence that supports it. And that bothers me because it's kind of backwards of what we're supposed to do with the scientific method, which is ask a question, design a rigorous study, collect data, and then accept findings, and then try to repeat it. You know, what I see a lot in what I will call agenda-driven research is starting with that desired conclusion, you cherry pick outcomes, you ignore data that doesn't fit what you think, and then you only cite your work, your own work. So all of those studies that, a lot of them that showed, you know, supposed risk, the thimerosal focus is interesting because it's particularly misleading. It was removed from childhood vaccines in 2004, even though there wasn't actually a clear correlation, but that's a whole nother story. But we've seen, you know, autism spectrum rates continue to rise. So that doesn't really make sense as a reason for why that would fit. Okay, we covered a lot and it was very dense. I think that's my last slide. Can we check? Thank you. Okay, perfect. Any questions? Yes.
So first of all, thank you very much. I think that was very helpful, good review of causation, correlation, et cetera. And of course, I've been following the whole acetaminophen and pregnancy and looking at acetaminophen. And yes, it is one of our safer medications, particularly for pregnant women. One of the things that I'm sure the studies, and I have not delved into the studies in depth, right? I always love the abstract and the conclusion, and then the methods, they bore me. So, and I'm sure that the studies have done a lot of multivariate analysis with the data, because one of the things that pops out for me is the reason for the Tylenol use.
Exactly.
Right? So if the reason that this pregnant woman needed to take Tylenol was because of pain, maybe there's a correlation between the pain and the risk of autism, and not the Tylenol at all. That yes, you're right, that is correlation, but not causation. Maybe it's the pain that causes it, or infection.
Yeah.
You know, we're learning so much more about infections, particularly viruses, and the amazing long-term damage that they do, and we don't even realize it. So perhaps it's, if there's an infection process going on in that pregnancy, that's what actually is more of the cause than the acetaminophen, which just tends to be peripheral. So,
yes.
Anyway, I very much appreciated your presentation. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, those are great points. Like what an infection leading to a fever, right? That someone would treat, or whatever is causing that pain, right? Another condition or something like that. Yeah, those are really good points.
I'm one of those people that I believe that there's a strong link between who paid for the study and what the outcome is.
Sure.
And probably one of the grossest examples I could give you was, for how many years was the tobacco industry pushing tobacco as absolutely safe, there's no link to any problems.
Yep.
And they were standing up screaming and yelling when it was decided, Attorney General put the notice on the package that said it may cause cancer. And even then they were denying it, and denying that they were doctoring it up and making the tobacco stronger or more addictive, da, 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 da. And then I would tell you, even the, starting from the conclusion end, is there a link and working backwards? If it was a legitimate study, and did the same process, they should come out with the same conclusion as somebody starting at the other end. I think if a study says, let's go study this drug and see if it causes your eyes to water, and that's the whole focus of the study. They're not studying it to see if there's a link to autism. They're studying it to see if it makes your eyes water. So I don't know what to believe or put my faith in anymore, because it seems like the science changes depending on who does the study and who does the focus, and what was the focus when you started.
Yeah.
So every time we turn around, there's a whole new set of circumstances and competing arguments about what was the scientific approach. I'm a firm believer that science says if you come up to a conclusion and you print the paper, then the next door neighbor or anybody else who's going to sit down and repeat your process, they should find the same results.
Yeah.
And if they can't repeat it, then obviously your conclusion was wrong. So I want to believe in science, but I don't necessarily believe the scientists that are doing this particular studies. So I don't know which way to turn about half the time.
Yeah, those are really good points. I think, you know, especially people are skeptical of pharmaceutical companies, right? Because they make vaccines, they make drugs, and obviously they want to sell their product. I think, you know, I can think back to medical school, and we were given a lot of kind of, you know, um, ethical studies on how to approach, you know, pharmaceutical drugs and studies, you know, done by pharmaceutical companies. And in general, we were always taught like, yeah, you should be a little extra skeptical of those, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know, we don't necessarily have other evidence, and so we're weighing things. But at least what I've seen, especially with vaccines, it's less true with pharmaceutical like drugs, but it's still true to an extent, is that there's often other groups doing studies as well. So a lot of like academics from all around the world that hopefully don't have those same influences and biases that, you know, pharmaceutical scientists associated with a pharmaceutical company would have. And from what I can tell, you know, especially with the vaccines and autism ones, the best ones are not linked to pharmaceutical companies. They're done by independent researchers. So that's something you can always try to look for, right? Is that, yeah, is there bias in this study? Who is paying for it? I think that's always appropriate to do.
I'd just like to add, just this morning, I saw an article that the state of Texas has now launched a lawsuit against the pharmaceutical maker or the maker of that. But I want to say that I appreciate your answers were very detailed, and I think that it's the job of this board that if there is a concern, if there's some doubt, if we're not sure, to just raise the awareness.
Sure.
And I really appreciate your answers on that. And I think we covered that pretty well. We still don't know the answer yet, and that time will tell, just like you said with the cigarettes. But I think just to raise awareness is, at least that's my objective.
So speaking of raising awareness, there's some great studies that have just been done about the shingles vaccine, herpes zoster vaccine, and amazing benefits that were unanticipated from that. A 25% reduction in cerebral dementia, so a brain disorder caused by blood vessel problems, right? Instead of Alzheimer's, but kind of the same category. So I'm really curious to just follow those, because speaking of awareness, we should be telling everybody over the age of 55 or 60 to get that shingles vaccine. There you go. I put in my promo.
Should I get a double dose?
No, I'm a pregnant man.
Any other questions? Thank you very much again, Dr. Krager.
Of course, thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time.
Excellent.
Okay, last, just a little bit of business is, the meeting for the next month. Where's my notes? Here. Instead of, November 25th, the Board of Health meeting, it's so close to Thanksgiving. I thought we would move it, and the clerks have given us a go-ahead to move it to December 2nd. So December 2nd will be our next Board of Health meeting, and so nothing in November. And I'll open it up to public comments at this time. We have any?
Thank you for the opportunity. At last week's Board of Commissioners meeting, appointments were made to the Great Rivers Behavioral Health Advisory Board. How does this integrate with what you're doing with this board, or is there duplication or synergy, or what's the position?
That's the first I've heard of it. So
I don't think that there's any overlap whatsoever, really.
They have
Being that I sit
completely
with both of
separate
them.
beneficial charters?
Say that one more time?
They have completely separate beneficial charters for us as a community?
Yes. Yeah, they're not, I don't, Gina, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's any overlap really in what we do and what they do. Yeah, there's not.
what do they do?
It is a consortium of 5 counties that have come together to delegate funds for behavioral health services within the 5-county district. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any more comments or questions? Okay, with that, we'll adjourn the meeting at 10:57. Thank you all for coming. We'll see you in December.